share it. Unfortunately, we missed your wonderful introduction, Charlotte. But yeah, thank you so much for everyone for joining. This is such an important topic to me. Luckily, this is the second panel today where I get to talk and hear and learn from people about this topic in particular, education and youth homelessness. So I think we can just jump into it. And I'm going to maybe tap on folks to first off introduce themselves. Who are you? And then introduce why the topic of youth homelessness in the education system is important to them out of our panelists. So maybe Alice, would you like to go first?
Hi, my name is Alice. I use she and her as a pronoun, so I will ask people to respect those. So basically I spent the last 3 years being a community activist and building my own projects, either in research or in training, community development, things like that. I've done it because I spent, I spent 10 years on the street, and I think it's important for people with experience to start helping and giving back so that, you know, we've been through it, so that way no one else has to go through the things that we've been through. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone, but yeah, I'm a little nervous. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And Leaf?
Hello, my name is Leif Harris. I'm a second-year anthropology student at Carleton University. My pronouns are he, him. Why the topic of youth homelessness in the education system is important to me is because I always wanted to go to school, but I wasn't financially able to when I was younger. I was homeless for 2 years, and I wasn't able to find a place or any finances that could register me in, or I couldn't find any bursary scholarships. I even had a hard time registering for school. So to hear about a bursary that helps people that are in the situation I was in just really impacts me. It's so significant and symbolizes so much to me. So that's why I'm here today.
Thanks, Leaf. Cheyenne.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cheyenne. My pronouns are she, they. I'm a non-binary Black femme. I work with Jane for almost 2 years and a half. 2 years? 2 years and a half, doing her research for her doctorate. And we formed many friendships. And I just like Jane. I just like our whole group project. I'm a very artistic person. And if I don't answer your message, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just thinking what to reply to you.
Thanks, Jana. Sorry, I'm losing my cursor. Stu.
Hey, I'm Stu. I'm a lived experience advocate. I've worked with Charlotte for 3 years on various projects, and the topic of youth homelessness in the education system is important to me because there's never been a time in my life where I've been like stable enough to get an education, even now as like an adult who speaks and like guest lectures at universities. I don't have a high school degree.
Taylor?
Hi, my name is Taylor. I'm new here. I was the first person to receive the Chicken and Boots scholarship this year. It's an incredible honor to feel at home in Carleton. Sorry, I'm nervous too. The topic of youth homelessness in education is important to me because I just want things to be accessible for everybody. I experienced a lot of couch surfing, group homes, foster homes growing up, and I oftentimes felt like I wasn't good enough to receive a university education, or I wouldn't be able to keep up, or I wouldn't be able to make any friends because people would be in a different socioeconomic group than me. So when I applied and I was denied, it was upsetting, but then I received a letter saying that there was another way that I could do it, called the ESP program. And that was the first time I realized that there was a little bit of accessibility for people who needed a second chance, who spent their high school years not really knowing what they were going to do, and really not focusing on that. A lot of kids, including myself, were a little bit more worried about other things, more adult things at that age. So I would like to see this scholarship grow big and offer someone a full ride, or even just a little bit of help. It's encouraging and it's important.
Thank you so much, Taylor. It's so nice to have you join us. And then Mickey, maybe, are you frozen? Mickey might be frozen. Maybe Charlotte, would you like to introduce yourself and speak to why this topic is important to you?
Yeah, my name's Charlotte Smith. I'm a Master of Sociology student. This topic's really important to me because when I became a peer researcher, I was basically hired to recruit research participants and then interview them about their homelessness, and schools kept coming up time and time again in those conversations. It was also really weird because I had been, in jail with a lot of these people, or on the street, sleeping on the streets with them. And then to like engage in these conversations and learn about their past, it just made me realize that we all had such unique stories, but also with these like, similar pillars, right? Like childhood trauma, like all these kinds of obstacles and atrocities. And it's really no wonder that we all ended up at the same place. But I became very passionate about seeing the education system as a way to prevent or intervene in issues around youth homelessness.
Thanks. Mickey?
Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Hi, everybody. I'm Mickey. Pronouns they or he. I worked with Jane for 2 years on a project at McGill. Probably the 2 coolest years of my young life so far. Why the topic of youth homelessness and education is important to me is in working on that project and also in my own life experience, I found that education creates upward momentum, and upward momentum is the only thing that's going to pull you out of a life like what I and many other people have lived. And so seeing the community come together and finding really awesome ways to create that upward momentum fills me with a lot of excitement and love, and anything I can do to like speak to their causes, I think it's the least I could do. So yeah, that's why this is important to me.
Am I forgetting anyone? Okay, thank you. And I'm Jane. As Charlotte said, I'm a doctorate student at McGill. My pronouns are they or she, and I work with a lot of these folks in different contexts. I'm not going to talk a lot about myself. I'm going to be your moderator today, but I do work looking at the intersections of homelessness and education, and look at how not only can interventions be taken up in schools that are necessary, but also how youth are organizing on their own to educate themselves and support one another, and think about how we can merge some of those efforts to ensure youth are getting the opportunities they need to and are supported in doing so. So I'm going to ask questions. I encourage you all to just jump in. I'm not going to go through each and every one, but if a question speaks to you, feel free to chime in. And if someone's talking, maybe just let me know, and I can make a cue. So the first question that I wanted to ask folks, and we know from research, we know from our lived experiences, I was kicked out of high school when I was experiencing housing precarity, but I wanted to go to school. So we know that homeless youth do want to graduate high school often, and may also want to go to university or college. Can you talk about some of the barriers that currently exist in educational attainment that you've seen that negatively impact how youth are engaging with schools? So that could be across any different schooling.
Do you mind if I go ahead, Jane?
Go for
So
it.
yeah, one of the biggest barriers for me, and I think it's still a huge, huge barrier, is that when you're neurodiverse, the schools are just not made for it. And especially what happens is for someone, let's say, who has ADHD or who's on the autism spectrum, when you're trying to go to a normal school, the system just doesn't work. It happened with me where like I was 15 and I was able to do like my classwork inside of half an hour. So what happened was I would get bored. I would go out and I would end up smoking joint or doing something and then getting in trouble, and then it would just start all over again. And so I quickly realized that like school is like this super conformist, super like everyone has to be the same and everyone has to like, you know, it's everyone has to act the same and be the same all the time. And unless we start trying to take some of those barriers down, it's not really going to do anything. That for me was the hardest one.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think even just the application process itself can be difficult when you don't really know how to go about it. I mean, that was my first struggle when I wanted to go to school. I was in transitional living, so I was technically homeless. But I didn't know anyone that followed up and helped me get the application done. I just didn't know how to do it. And trying to do it on my own was very challenging. So I think more supports in that area could be very helpful, as well as the finances. Like, how is someone that's homeless going to afford that? There are a lot of bursaries and scholarships that I was able to get, but besides that, it's very challenging.
Stu?
Yeah, I think that a lot of like the criminalization that accompanies high schools, especially with like school liaison officers, you know, like that puts people like drug users, a prime example, at huge risk, and you know, like is doing poorly in high school because you have a bunch of problems worth going to jail for like 20 years? You know, like even if you want to go to high school, you can't. Like you can't bring yourself to that risk.
That's a great point. And that reminds me, I was actually speaking with Cheyenne. One of the things we were talking about earlier today was talking about treating homeless youth as adults from a very early age and having to make decisions like an adult would be expected to within these systems. Anyone else want to jump in on this question?
Actually, I did want to add something too. Just for me was the fact that I spent my first night outside. I was 13, and I was still having to go to school because I grew up with the Quebec school system where until you're 16, you have to go to school. And what happened was I would do that for 2-3 years, and then the teachers knew that I was already 14, 15, 16. I was sleeping on the streets. I was doing whatever. And instead of actually trying to help or trying to say, hey, we can get you maybe in the housing, trying to connect with a social worker, whatever, they just kind of like gave up and just do whatever instead of trying to maybe help. And then when I got to 16, they just literally don't bother coming back to school. So like dealing with youth at that age, you have to become an adult, as you said, really fast. But at the same time, like we have to have a better support system around the whole schooling system at that age. A lot of kids teenagers end up homelessness for a variety of reasons in high school. And until we have the proper supports around them, it's just, I don't know if any of this makes sense to anyone, but like there's a lacking of support, there's a lacking of training, there's a lacking of just general caring. I find that there's like this huge, huge, huge gap in the system.
Mickey?
Alice could have said everything I was about to say, so thank you to her.
Mickey, can you, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot because we worked together for so long. Can you speak about the phenomena of students kind of being asked to leave through these like unofficial mechanisms in schools?
I can. So I did not want to drop out of high school originally. I was on the street still trying to get through. My attendance was very poor, especially in my final year. I was working, so I would work late into the night, sleep through my morning, have a school, not have classes in the afternoon, and go to work. This was obviously a big problem. This created so much of a problem that the school told me that because my attendance was so poor and because a couple of my teachers had chosen to fail me because they felt I could do better, was their wording. The school felt that this was grounds to say that I was clearly demonstrating that I did not want to be there and to force, essentially, I put it as force me to drop out. It's like, it's not, it's, I don't know, it was murky and very poorly explained to me at the time. But yeah, this created obviously a lot of instability in my education as my housing situation became increasingly unstable as well, and I was never able to finish. This is obviously a huge barrier because I know I'm not the only one this has happened to. I've actually talked to a lot of kids who went to the same high school as me after coming back to Southern Ontario, and apparently this was a common practice around this time. A lot of us have theorized that it was the school trying to up its image. Obviously, less kids attending with poor attendance and bad grades makes the school look better. Dropouts also mean more funding, keeps kids from dropping out. This is obviously a very poisonous, very destructive system that's built on a lack of caring. And sorry, I'm starting to rant. I'm going to pass it back.
Thanks. I'm going to move on to the next question just so that we have time for a Q&A, but does anyone have any like last burning thoughts on this one? Okay. So thinking of the kind of inverse of this, what supports do schools have for youth experiencing homelessness? I know, Leaf, you mentioned that there were some bursaries. I know that there is like this creation of the bursary at Carleton. What supports exist? Can you think of some examples that do exist that have worked? Yeah. Charlotte, what do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say like Leaf, the hardest part about like moving into post-secondary for me was the application process. And the first time I tried, I actually just like ran out of Algonquin crying because I was asking for help to sign up, and they were just like, well, it's all online. And I was just like, I didn't have the guts to tell them like, listen, no, I know it's online, but I really need you to hold my hand right now through this process. So I just left and gave up. And then what helped me get into Carleton was meeting friends who had been to university, and them taking the time to like go through all the application with me, including helping me write my entrance letter. So that's something that I think could help people. The supports that currently exist that I've heard from young people have said things like, the material supports, like the breakfast club is a popular one. Young people often point to but not every school has that. And again, that's not helping end anybody's homeless, but at least it's putting food in your belly.
There's actually a support thing. Well, it's not necessarily support 100%, but it works in a lot of high schools, especially here in Quebec, because I know the system here a little bit more. But something I find that they should do elsewhere because it works very well. It's usually they'll be in more what they call adult schools, which are basically for people who've dropped out or it's adult ed. And what it is I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head. I'll look it up. But what it is there's 4 social workers in each team. And you can come in, and when you schedule a meeting, they'll be like, okay, what do you want to do for school? Do you want to go to like university? Do you want to go to trade school? They'll ask you what you want to do. And then they'll walk you through the entire process. And like, even if it takes 6 months, even if it takes whatever, any question you can ever have, even like, how am I supposed to pay for this? Any question you ever have, they'll take the time to answer it, and they'll actually just like literally walk you through the whole process until your first day at school. And then they'll even try to help you keep going at school. So if you have I'm in from the university 3 months down the line, you can still go and see them, and they'll still help you through it. It's a really cool system. I think they should do elsewhere because it really works here.
Yeah, and in Ottawa, we have guidance counselors that do that in grade 12 and whatnot, but after that, you're sort of on your own. I know that for me, beneficial supports around schooling were things around my community. So like getting a job and finding different supports like CMHA and OIM in different places that gave me community, but also helped me get through the process that I needed to get through in order to get to school, as well as maintain a routine.
Anyone else? Or also, the second question here, what supports do you think that they could have that they currently don't?
I think upping things more like Charlotte mentioned the breakfast clubs in schools. I think providing kids, if you're going to keep like someone locked in a building for 8 hours, making sure they've eaten that day is probably pretty important, especially if you're going to be asking them to be doing physical activities and mental activities. So definitely, I don't know, taking full charge of youth, not just claiming to and kind of leaving them to their own devices in big concrete boxes.
I think you said it really well there, Mickey.
Thank you.
Also, even if the child or the teenager, the kid itself, still had a meal, something that just mentally they might not be there for school because there's gonna be so much trouble at home in their life, their personal life, even trouble at school, bullying, so like it's not that we should force kids to participate in class and their activities. It's just like we should respect people that don't have the same energy as in everyone else during the same day. So sometimes people just need like a day or two off, but they still have to go to work and they're not talkable. So same things with kids. Sometimes they have days that they just want to, take a time off at school and not talk about necessarily their problems. They just want to eat and be someplace warm or hang out with people that they trust and they like, So like, even like Mick said, even though like they ate, they have clean clothes, sometimes it's just mentally they're not here. They're not into like doing algebra, they're just not there. So
I think we should accommodate homelessness as like similar to how we accommodate disabilities with supports, like in class, out of class, just like the ability to retake tests or like acknowledge that maybe like needing to sleep is maybe a medical need and letting them crash somewhere because
a medical need. It is a medical need. It is.
Yeah.
Continue. I'm sorry.
No, I was like tapering off. I was like, yeah, that's pretty much all I had.
Yeah. So, also, the need to sleep. It is very important, So it's like people like I saw that when I was my experience in high school because I moved a lot, and like the teachers at school, they were talking like teenagers have a lot of energy. Teenagers don't need sleep. And many research later, we realized that teenagers need more sleep because they are growing to be an adult. They need more food and they need more sleep because their brain are developing. So if you are a human being that is developing to become an adult and you don't have sleep, you don't have food, and you're homeless, and you have XYZ problems, and Mama Daniela, you're gonna snap. We all have this experience. We're gonna snap. So the need for sleep for youth homelessness, it is important. Food, shelter, sleep. The 3 priorities should be important now. Even though if they're not interested to finish their high school right away, they need that first.
Thanks, China. Yeah, I think that's such an important point too, and gets at the idea often also that homelessness doesn't exist in schools, that this wouldn't be an issue that students are dealing with, and as a result, not something that would be accommodated because it doesn't exist. And I think also that schools can provide supports even if that student doesn't seem like they necessarily want to finish school. Any other big thoughts on this before I move on to the next question?
I just add on the sleep. I know we have to move on, but just on the sleeping thing, if you guys are saying this, I'm just realizing how exhausted I was even before becoming homeless. Like, yes, when you have nowhere to sleep, you're obviously going to show up to school and put your head down on the desk. But even before that, during my family breakdown and declining mental health, I was just constantly exhausted, and my teacher just thought I was stoned, but I didn't even smoke weed.
Also, teacher assume too much. Because a student has XYZ, how you say comportement, Jane, in English?
Like
behavior. If you have XYZ behavior, you must be on XYZ substance because all the kids wanted to drink alcohol and weed. No! It's called mental illness, people! The brain is an organ. When the brain is sick, it has tumors and mental illness, and we should treat it as if you had cancer in your boobs. Like, a lot of health professionals don't see mental illness like that. And that is one big stigma in the medical field. No matter if the person is homeless or not. Mental illness is another subject for another time. We all know that, but like the stigma in the medical field, another subject for another time.
But I think this is what happens. We've seen in our research where we're looking at schools, we're looking at the healthcare system, we're looking at mental health care, we're looking at criminal justice and child welfare, that they all intersect and these stigmas carry across them. So like, I was showing up to school using drugs, but I still deserved an education. So I think across these different experiences and these different ways that youth are being in schools, we have to reduce stigma through education. Okay, I'm gonna move on. But so I think
that's something really quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
When you're talking about that, this is gonna sound like really, really crazy, but like for students who are over a certain age, like over 14, 15, you have to start realizing that we have to start, I keep forgetting what you call it in English, but in French it's réduction des méfaits, harm reduction. We have to start applying harm reduction at school, because it's not to a teacher to judge what you're doing, even if you're smoking a joint or whatever. We have to start applying harm reduction.
Absolutely. And actually, it was interesting in our research, someone talked about harm reduction approaches to school as a harm. So like they would take 2 days off a week because that was the only way they could actually get their degree done. Like, but I do agree with that as well. So coming out of Charlotte and Stu's work, they've shared in the past that youth do want to be in schools, and we've seen this in our research in Montreal as well. And it's clear in this panel, it's not for a lack of wanting that people want to be engaged in education. So I want to ask, do you think that education on homelessness should be a feature of elementary and high school teachings? And if so, if not, discuss. If so, how do you think that this would help the issue?
I can take this one. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. So I think it would be important, I don't know so much in grade school, but maybe even 9 to 12, even just a sort of introduction to what homelessness looks like. Because Charlotte and I had this conversation yesterday where a lot of kids will go through this thought of, well, am I homeless enough? Or what do I identify as? What am I, you know? And this sort of thinking is isolating, and it is harmful. And I think that for a kid who's 14, 15, who is couch surfing, who is in a group home, doesn't have a stable home, needs to understand that they are not inhibited in any way from receiving the same type of care as anybody else. And I think that the stigma that you see in education, which you guys have touched on really well, is that there's just not enough understanding. And I don't think this is just on the students' behalf, but I think this is on the teachers too. There needs to be a level of understanding that homelessness is not bad. Homelessness does not equate with somebody being a bad person. It's just a circumstance, and we are all one paycheck away from being in that same circumstance. So the judgment, the criticism needs to subside, and the only way of doing that is education, and not just for students, but for the teachers as well.
I was talking about this with Jane an hour before we're doing this, like educating the professionals that has been in the medical field, either it's like social work field, any professional field that might touch on youth homelessness, and that question about like a 15-year-old kid saying like, am I homeless enough to receive this type of service? Like a child should not even have to think about this thought process, because you are a human being and you are in a situation that is shitty to you for growing up to become a fully functional human being, okay? So like, if you need help, you deserve to have help. And sometimes the professional in any fields, medical, professional, social, whatever, what kind of any fields, I don't know what's happening, because either because they're chained, because they are being paid by the government or whatever, but like the way they think about it is just like, meh, you still live at your parents' house, legally speaking, our hands are tied. But did you listen to the child situation? It's like they don't, I think those people have critical thinking, but just the fact that they are tied up because of the laws and because they are paid by the government, they cannot do much. Some professionals, they will go beyond their job description, and it's okay, but they are at risk of losing their job because they live from paycheck to paycheck, just like anybody else. And that is a problem. That is not normal. Humans are naturally want to share and to help other humans, especially when tiny humans that are under the like adult age, under 25. And it's a problem with the laws that the government, like, they vote on the laws and everything. It's just like, it's a huge problem. And like, it's not an easy, so it's not a one-time solution that we need to work on, but it's like, it's just frustrating. It's frustrating for everyone. Seriously, that's why we're doing this panel. That's why we're doing this panel, because it's frustrating. It's like, it's not normal. It's not normal. Like, a 15-year-old child shouldn't be asking themselves, am I homeless enough to receive? You are a child. You're supposed to receive those kind of services if you are in danger. But anyways, the government is shitty.
So I don't know to what Taylor said. I think educating the students, I know what sports are available, are huge too. Like knowing what's available to them, and also what supports need to be available so that you can move forward progressively.
I think that a really important aspect is like a curriculum surrounding domestic violence and consent-based education. or sex education, because a lot of people don't realize that they're in extremely abusive situations that because they grew up in it. It's normal to them. And that also, like, the language in which these things are taught should be like very gender neutral, because a lot of it isn't, and some people might not realize that they're affected as well. And I think I had another and the rights. Kids need to know what their rights are as kids. You learn a lot about your rights as an adult that you will get when you're 18, that you're granted. You don't know anything about what your rights are, and people lie to you constantly and manipulate you when they have power over you.
The other thing too is we have to have more supports for LGBTQ students, especially those with gender identity that's really different. We've come a long way for like sexual orientation, but gender identity in that, there's still a huge way to go. And yes, we're doing a lot of work, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on this. Like just general education, general acceptance. The list is long, but we have to do a better job with that, to have better supports as well. So that if someone comes out or decides to show up and has a gender identity that can be extremely varied, it's not up to anyone else to judge, but we have to work on that as well.
I think that can start, oh, sorry. Just a quick point. I think that that has to start by institutions, first of all, hiring people of LGBTQ backgrounds. And I think that is the hardest barrier. I don't know about you guys, but I went to a Catholic grade school and high school, and the thought of, you know, having a teacher, you know, able to represent that for me, it would have been great. It would have allowed me to have some sort of understanding of, you know, the beauty of the difference in people. And I think that once we see a little more expansion with, you know, hiring all kinds of different people, then, you know, you're going to allow students, you're going to allow kids to find a mentor in those people and a role model, and allow them to be themselves.
Diversity is the force, is indeed diversity when you want to change. That's for sure. And to go back just one point about schools, about like abuse at home, abuse, sexual abuse, and abuse, like any kind of abuse. There's a lot of stigma about people that identify as a man or trans men that have a lot of abuse. And we think about like abusive behavior is common, like the male versus the female, but there's a lot of abuse of men abusing little boys or too, like teenage boys and all that. It's like, it's very hidden because we think like men have it all. They can't have, just because patriarchy exists doesn't mean that every person that identifies as a man has privilege. They have some sort of privilege, but they still go through abuse, like Stu said, and it is a huge problem. Like I said, there's so many like subcategories subject to youth homelessness that we cannot cover everything just one panel.
No, absolutely. And I was thinking of this also, the last panel we were on, one of the panelists was also talking about programming for Indigenous youth existing in schools that have historically been agents of colonial violence, and youth not seeing themselves represented in faculty, youth not having support systems that specifically speak to supporting their culture and their language, and how much of a difference it can make towards stability when that kind of visibility is there, and that kind of support is there. Knowing that these are institutions, I think for many people that have been violent institutions. So you're so right, Shanna. We could probably have like 8 panels. Maybe we will in the new year, just on a billion different topics. But I really we can keep chatting about this, but I really want to open it up to folks for questions, because I know that we're wrapping up in about 18 minutes. And I want to thank everyone. This has been such a wonderful panel for me to be able to be a part of. And I think there's so much that we can unpack from this. And it's clear that this is such a complex issue that isn't going to be easily fixed, but there's so many solutions that we can start thinking of. Charlotte, did you want to say anything, or does anyone really want to add anything based on before we wrap up this discussion, before we jump into Q&A?
No, I personally don't have anything. I just want to say thanks for being here. And yeah, since we don't have an overwhelming amount of people here, you could probably just ask your questions with your voice if you're comfortable with that.
I'm going to stop screen sharing so we can also, if we want to turn on our mics, if we want to have a conversation, I'm going to keep recording. So just keep that in mind if you want to turn on your camera. But thank you.
Jane, do you mind if I say something really quick?
Absolutely.
We were talking about it before this panel started, and I think it's important to spend a few minutes talking about it. Dans la Rue, which is probably like one of the best organizations I've ever seen for youth homelessness. Their school, I think it's important to take 2 minutes to talk about it, because it is literally the best example of a school for homeless people I've ever seen. You can do most of your classes in there to go get your high school diploma. The other classes that you can't do there, they'll send you out to a specialized school to do, but it's this kind of school where we're talking about sleep earlier. Well, that's just it. If you need to go sleep for 2 hours in the middle of the day, they'll let you go sleep. If you decide that one day it's just too overwhelming and you can't deal, take the day off. They don't care. You can have lunch. So like all your basic needs are met. There's therapists, there's social workers, anything you want to go do afterwards. They have the support there. They're overwhelmingly amazing. So I suggest anyone to take at least 10, 15 minutes of the day to go see how they do their school, because it is the most unique school I've ever seen, and it's also the most amazing school I've ever seen.
Sorry, I didn't catch the name of that school that you mentioned, Alice.
It's Dans la Rue.
Dans la Rue.
Yeah, it's a youth homelessness group in Montreal. They've been around for a very long time, and it started off small, but their school there is just amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I finished my high school over there. Do you guys know that? I finished my high school in Dans la Rue. Like, less than 2 months, I went to university.
Same.
Dropped out, but I still went to university. You can do so many things because of them. They are amazing.
I've added a link to the school in the chat, and yeah, I've been partnering with Dans la Rue for the past few years. We've heard in our research how integral these kinds of programs, and they also offer bursaries for those folks who want to do post-secondary. So thanks for sharing that, Alice. If people aren't comfortable also asking questions, you can private message me in the chat. Si vous voulez poser des questions en français, on peut les traduire aussi. So yeah, any big questions from folks?
I don't know if it's a big question. Oh, sorry, Kareem. I jumped in. But I just wonder, along the way as you were in school and kind of contemplating what was next, what kind of messages, I realize there's no one magic thing someone could have said to make it seem possible to kind of get your diploma and move on to other things if that's what you wanted. But are there any kinds of things that would have been important for you to hear that would have encouraged you along the way?
Well, the first will be family support. And when it comes to youth homelessness, family support might not be there. So it really depends on the la gentillesse of people. How do we say gentillesse? The kindness of people in general. If you're scared to help someone that is homeless or a youth that is homeless, because you might think they might take it the wrong way, the way you want to help them, it will never be a wrong way to help them. Just letting you know. There's never a wrong way to help someone. And it's just like words can do stuff to people, but action speaks louder. I know it's like cheesy, very cheesy thing, but we are human beings, and when we see someone do an action to help us, that's when we feel moved, because words of encouragement, prayers, they're all well received. But like, if we don't see it, someone doing something, we are not gonna believe it. Especially when you are like a teenager in a shitty situation. If you don't see someone helping you do something, you will not believe the words. It's just the way that we are human beings.
I agree with that. I don't think words can really do too much. They can help to an extent, but really you need community supports and programs and things that would actually help you, in my opinion.
I agree with that. Like, I'm trying to think what message would have helped me. And I know the one message that has helped me, it helped me get off the street, and it helped me succeed at Carleton University. And it was my drug counselor, who has been there for she's retired now due to stress because of the opioid crisis. And she's the strongest person I know, which just goes to show, not that strength, that's the wrong way to phrase it. But anyways, this woman is brilliant. The opioid crisis is so terrible that she's had to leave her job. But she told me a few years ago that I've never stopped believing in you. And when she said that, I knew that she meant it. But I knew that she meant it because of all the actions she had taken in all of the years leading up to that, including things like when I was working at a motel and I had just been beaten up on Christmas Eve. She drove all the way from Smiths Falls to give me a carton of cigarettes and just sit on the bed with me. And that act, and then just her being there for all these years. It's not like she was always trying to help me. She kind of just left her hand out, and it was always there for me to reach up and grab if I needed it, but she wouldn't push me. And so I know that she always believed in me, and that she would have always been there, just for somebody to not give up, right? Because so many people give up on us: teachers, parents, family members, friends.
I couldn't have put it better myself. Sometimes it's not what they say, it's just knowing that they'll be there no matter what.
I think that just to add really quickly, social programs like ESP for me was the transcendence from, a 50 average in high school just because of not caring and having other things to worry about. I think that if we were to advertise these social programs more to people, if we know there's a hangout spot like that, youth with lived experience hang out, and we just go by and we say, hey, did you ever consider this prospect? Or did you ever think that maybe you might want to continue your education? I think that, I didn't stumble upon ESP, and I think that it would be beneficial if it was more out there for people to know that, there's ways, that they can improve their situation.
Thanks, guys. That's super helpful. Total transparency. I work for the Inner Support Program, ESP, that Taylor was just talking about. So, a part of, I think, what I'm trying to think through is I hear you guys' stories, and I really appreciate you sharing your experiences and stuff. Is just, I don't know, how do we, when we do have a program that might be useful, how do we even kind of get there and let people know it exists when we're tiny programs with zero budgets and that kind of thing. But points of connection like this are helpful to me. Thanks.
Well, for that exact issue, I think you need to advertise in the points where everyone congregates, like drop-ins, like everything.
Also, word of mouth is very important. So encouraging people to tell their friends, and even if they don't need the help, getting it to that people and getting them to pass it along can be really important. The grapevine is a powerful thing.
Kareem, did you have a question as well? Ow, cat.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I have a lot of questions, but there's one that comes to my mind. What is what is the dream for people? Like, if there's such a thing as a promised land, what does it look like? Like, what do people feel this is the thing?
What do you mean? Like, I think that depends on the individual and be very diverse and different for everyone.
I think like the most common dream for any people on earth is to be accepted that who we are. Unless you are a pedophile and a murderer, it's just be accepted for who you are. No matter what skin, color you have, religion background, cultural background, no matter what genitals you have, no matter what identity you have, sexual alteration you have, just be accepted and to be have your own, not small, but a group of people that resembles a little bit resembles like you, just to be accepted who we are and to speak in our truth. That's the most thing that human beings seek to be comfortable with. But like this, like the biggest dream, that common dream like everyone has, just to be accepted as who we are. But like I said, unless you are a pedophile and a murderer, like common sense thing, like unless that, like we just want to be loved the way we are. Pretty much like common big dream for anyone.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. That is the best ethical thing that everybody could want. For me personally, it would be to be accepted into a master's program, to have education be acceptable or accessible for everybody, to take people with lived experience and ingrain that into education, because you will see some beautifully written things from people who have seen all kinds of color of life, and to deny that for certain people is just such an atrocity, you know. And for me, like, you know, opening up that Carleton booklet with all of the programs in it, and you know, being accepted, that was a form of acceptance for me. And I feel that if everybody had that chance, you know, whether it was an apprenticeship at a college, or it was getting your high school diploma, or getting a master's degree, I think that education is a big dream. It gives you money, and then it allows you to build your own life. You know, unfortunately, we all need the dollar bill to make something, whatever that is.
I agree. And I think that those things can also both be held in our hands when we're thinking of it, that people all have individual kinds of trajectories, but also that everyone wants to have that opportunity. And so even if they don't choose to take it in this way or that way, making sure that those opportunities are there. I know for me, having that ingrained, like this lived experience ingrained in different parts, giving people opportunities, being able to have peer mentorship across different places in people's professional careers, I've seen just the benefits of that. Having mentorship opportunities that you just don't really have access to when you're precariously housed, I think is one of the biggest positive things I've seen make a difference. I know Erin has a question, maybe just like our last question, if folks are still up for it.
Thanks, I'll be quick. Thanks everybody. I just wanted to recognize that, like, on Giving Tuesday, which is so much about giving money, I just want to super appreciate the fact that you've given your time and stories and expertise to this today. So I think that's actually the best Giving Tuesday ever. My question is though, I teach at a university, and for the past 3 years, pretty much in every class I've had somebody disclose that they are homeless in class. And so I'm just looking for advice. I mean, I think it's especially when I talk about the definition of homelessness, and I talk about how broad it can be, and so hidden homelessness. And so I think there's people who never thought of themselves as having been homeless before, and then in class, they kind of see that and are making these connections. So just advice, especially on I think if they came to me after, I could handle it pretty okay. But in class, in a group, you know, sometimes of hundreds, sometimes of 30, do you have any advice on when students might disclose their experiences of homelessness?
I think first and foremost, this goes back to acceptance, right? Just whatever you say, making sure they know that that's thank you for sharing, and that's like you're sorry that they're going through that, but that you acknowledge it, right? Like the worst thing I think is when you do finally have the guts to disclose something like that is silence, right? Like you, and then you feel embarrassed, like you feel like, oh God, I've overshared or something, and it's just more that people don't know what to say, or they don't want to say the wrong thing. But I think saying nothing is worse than saying anything, and that if you do say something out of a gut reaction that is offensive, or like, you didn't mean to say, like you act too shocked, then just coming back, just having the guts to come back and say, I'm sorry I acted that way, like that was just the shock of me hearing that. Actually, this experience is normal. Like homelessness is unfortunately so common, and I'm really sorry you're going through that. What can I do to help, if anything?
My perspective, not as like a student, but as like a public speaker in classes, and disclosing my trauma in front of people, obviously, is like sometimes people will say stuff and like stuff that's really not something you want to have said in front of a room of people, like that really should be like done in like a counseling or therapy kind of context, like what happened to you isn't your fault, stuff like that. Like don't start mind fucking people in front of their peers. Like I don't know, like yeah, like acknowledge that they said something, but like over validating and like opening doors like that are already being opened in like a public forum can be difficult to process.
That's a really good point, Stu. Anyone else? I know that it's 5:30 also, so if folks have to leave, thank you so much for joining us this late in the day on a dark December 1st. And as Aaron said, it is Giving Tuesday. Charlotte, did you want to say anything about the bursary before people might have to leave?
The bursary, you can visit futurefunder.ca. I'm sure people are sick of hearing me say this, but futurefunder.ca and search chicken to donate if you wish to support, and if you wish to share that link around, it's very much appreciated. And thank you all so much for being here, and like thank you to the speakers so much. I really really appreciate it, and especially to Taylor, who's never done this before and agreed like super last minute. Really appreciate it, and it just makes me feel so great. Like this is my acceptance, like to be part of like your guys' lives, and like be able to talk to you about lived experience issues that other people don't understand. Like that's how I come to feel accepted, and in turn that just allows me to do so much better in my personal life as well as in my community work, everything.
This was really special. I don't think I've been on a panel of folks with lived experience since I was on a panel with Stu pre-COVID. And that was such a, like, this is a rare opportunity where we get to speak about this from multiple perspectives. And I'm so grateful to have been able to moderate it. And thank you, everyone.